One American's fight for justice, what it's like to be the judge in a murder trial, and the legendary life of Los Angeles Superior Court Judge in Compton, California, Kelvin Filer. All right. Hey ho, let's go. On Legends and Losers, we aspire to have authentic dialogues that make a difference. Today we welcome sitting Los Angeles Superior Court Judge in Compton, California, Kelvin Filer. Judge Filer's story and the dialogue you're about to hear is one of the most inspirational and captivating I've ever heard or ever been a part of. He's insightful. He's incredibly smart. He's funny. We talk about his love for singing and karaoke and how he grew up with a legendary father during the birth of the civil rights movement. Now, the LA Times describes Judge Filer's story as one of, quote, perseverance and belief of a determined father and a loyal son and an unbreakable bond with a city, end quote. And man, am I ever glad you're here because this one's something extraordinary. Now, I met Judge Filer through my new friend Wendell Myers. If you're a regular listener to Legends and Losers, you know that I was lucky enough to give the commencement speech at in the East Bay campus for DeVry University, East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area, earlier this summer. And that's because I met my new friend Wendell Myers, and he's a senior executive at DeVry, and we met accidentally in an airport. And one thing led to another, and he was kind enough to give me the honor of speaking at their commencement. And I really want to thank him and President Daly and the entire executive and faculty team at DeVry for the amazing work they do. It's been an extraordinary experience to get to know you folks and to sit there and see all those people get their degrees. And thank you for including me. Now, shortly after that, Wendell and I were on email, and he introduced me to a man he described as his best friend and cousin, and that man is our guest today. Now, this summer has left an ugly stain on the United States of America. There's no way around it. And one way to combat evil, hatred, bigotry, racism, and terrorism is to shine a bright light on the people who are working to make our country and world a better place and a more just place. Our guest today, and frankly his entire family, have worked diligently, tirelessly for generations to make exactly that kind of difference. Judge Filer, his father, who was the man people called Mr. Compton, Maxcy Filer, and his whole family, frankly, are an inspiration to people, not just in Compton, not just in Los Angeles, not just in California, but frankly, an inspiration to people all around the world. So now here he is, sitting Los Angeles Superior Court Judge from Compton, California, Kelvin Filer. So, Your Honor, tell me what it feels like to be a judge.
I feel so blessed and feel like I have the greatest job in the world. And sometimes I just wonder why me and why have I been allowed to really to live the life that I've lived. It's truly been a blessing. It's a great job. It has some issues that you sometimes have to be concerned about, particularly sentencing and given the type of case that I hear now, but wonderful job. My brothers tease me because I tell them I look forward to coming to work on Monday, which is true.
Wow. And what is it about being a judge that, you know, you almost sound like you could be a motivational speaker with how much enthusiasm you have for your job?
Well, part of one of the most gratifying things about being a judge is the fact that I can go back and talk to students, talk to high school students, talk to college students, talk to law students, and tell them, look, I'm living a dream job, and if I did it, you can do it. That's one of the benefits that I love sitting in my hometown of Compton, California, because I like to point out to people, and I say this proudly, that I'm sitting right now, I can look to the right, and I can see my high school, Compton High School, where I went to school. I can go outside my courtroom, look out my window, I can see my elementary school, Rosecrans Elementary School. I can literally see Davis Middle School, which is where I went to middle school. And with some binoculars, I can see the top of my mother's house, because my mother's house is right around the corner from Davis Middle School. Now, the courthouse is relatively new. It was built in 1977, 1978. Where it sits is exactly where my church used to be. And my law office, former law office, was right across the street. So I haven't gone anywhere. But I feel like
you really haven't made it anywhere in your life, sir.
I haven't gone anywhere physically, but I think in terms of academically and doing some other things, that I've gone places where at least I can tell students, look, I did it. So whatever your dream is, you can do it.
And Your Honor, why was being a judge your dream?
Well, and actually being a judge was not necessarily my initial dream. My dream was to be a lawyer. I wanted to be an attorney. I wanted to practice right here in my hometown of Compton, California. Now, to talk about that, though, I have to mention my father.
I was just about to ask you that.
Okay.
I did some homework, and your father just sounds like an extraordinary man, and you know, not to be corny or anything, but an extraordinary American.
Well, let me tell you, I'm very, very proud. He's my hero for sure. And I'm proud to have been one of his sons. But I can remember at an early age growing up, my dad wanted to be a lawyer. He was also very involved in the Compton branch of the NAACP. In fact, my father was a civil rights fighter.
But your father didn't grow up in Compton, did he?
No, he grew up in Marianna, Arkansas. And he was one of, I think, 8 children in his family, and he was the only boy, so they kind of babied him. But when he grew up, his idol was Thurgood Marshall. He was a fighter for civil rights. He met my mom in Elkhart, Indiana, and he initially was going to dental school, but he didn't like the weather in Elkhart.
Wait a minute. I just want to make sure I understand this, because, you know, the twists and turns of people's lives can be so fascinating. So he's in dental school.
He's in dental school.
And is he in Indiana?
He's in Indiana.
And he doesn't like the weather.
And he
meets your mom, yeah.
And of course, they want to get married, but he cannot take the weather. So they're gonna, and he did want to get involved and stay involved in politics, or at least in the political scene. So they moved out to California. And when we got out to California, that he found a place in Compton. He and my mom.
And what was it about California? Do you know?
The weather.
So it was just the weather. Yeah.
Just the weather at that point. And that was also a time when blacks were migrating west, because there were a lot of job opportunities.
So what year would this have been, Your Honor?
This is 1951, 52, when he wanted to move out to California. So they moved out here, and they first lived on 132nd Street, but it's still in Compton, 132nd Street in Wilmington. I was born in 1955, and then they moved to Arbutus Street, corner of Arbutus Matheson, where that same house sits. But my dad got involved in politics. And not only did he involved in politics, but he knew then that his idol was Thurgood Marshall. And so he wanted to be a lawyer. So he was going to school, and he was going to law school at night. He was going to law school.
Did he have other friends that were lawyers?
He had a cousin by the name of Leo Brenton, a cousin by marriage. Leo is now deceased, but Leo was a revolutionary attorney. And he at one time represented Angela Davis. He also was the attorney for Jimi Hendrix and Jimi Hendrix's estate. So Leo was a civil rights fighter.
That as a fan of rock and roll and somebody who is a big fan of Jimi Hendrix, is that the greatest law job in history right there, other than maybe yours right now?
I'm sure it is.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just couldn't let that one go by.
But that was one that Leo was proud to do. But Leo was a fighter, so my father wanted to follow in that vein. So, and Thurgood Marshall, of course, was the attorney who argued the revolutionary case of Brown versus Board of Education. So that's what my father wanted to do, because he felt like the attorneys were the ones who were really making a difference. My father was a big man physically. He also spoke in a loud voice. He also was very, very strong. If you shook his hand, he would look you in the eye, and you knew that you shook Maxcy Filer's hand. But he also was the most honest person I've ever met in my life. And he really just wanted to do the right thing. And he felt that he needed to be in the forefront of the fight to get blacks rights for blacks. We were known as coloreds and Negroes at that time. But that's what he wanted to do. And he realized that it was through the law is how it was going to get done. So he came out here, got married, came out here. They already had 2 kids. I was born, and my father decided he wanted to go to law school. So he went to law school. He worked 2 or
And
3
Your Honor, I hate to
jobs.
interrupt you. Yeah, what kind of work was he doing at the
Okay.
time?
He was working 2 or 3 jobs. He was working for a milk company. He was also working as a parking lot attendant, ironically enough, for the LA City Attorney's Office. And then he was going to school. My mom was also working as a nurse and as a beautician. So they are both working. But I
Do you
never
look
felt like
back
they
now?
weren't around. I'm
Do you
sorry.
look back now and think they had 2 jobs and they had how many siblings do you have?
I have 3 brothers and 3 sisters. So it's 6 siblings total, 7 of us in total.
So do you look back and think, how did mom and dad ever do this?
Yes, I do. Because as far as I was concerned, I had the greatest childhood in the world. And it wasn't like my dad was gone for a period of time. Even though he was working all these jobs, he always made time to spend time with his children. My mom was the same way. Growing up, they both were involved in the PTA. They both were involved in making sure that we went to church. They both were involved in coming to all of our baseball games, our football games. My mother was a den mother when I was in the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts. My mother stressed musical instruments. I see you have some guitars in your
Yes, sir.
background there.
What do you play any instruments?
I used to play the trumpet, and I wish that she would have made me take piano lessons because, man, if I could have taken piano lessons, I write poetry now. I would have been able to play and sing at the same time. Man,
It's not
woo!
too late, Your Honor.
I don't know. It might be that bus may have sailed. That bus may have left the route already. So, but I still love to sing at karaoke days.
Oh yeah. What kind of
Yes,
music do you like to sing?
R&B, old school. I'm a huge Sly and the Family Stone fan. I love Larry Graham. My karaoke songs are My Girl and One in a Million You, which is by Larry Graham, who's the bassist for Sly and the Family Stone. And now still singing with Graham Central Station. And I'm not shy. So
I got that.
doesn't bother me at all. But no,
Although
I just feel like,
it must be quite. It's not every day you see a judge up on stage singing karaoke in your local bar.
well,
At
let
least,
me tell you, I just got through singing before all the judges in Los Angeles Superior Court. I actually sang the national anthem.
oh wow.
I sang the national anthem. We had an all judges meeting just a few months ago, and the presiding judge asked me to sing the national anthem. He said he heard that I could somewhat carry a tune, and so I sang it, and I had a ball. I'm
And
just
what
waiting
was
for
that
the
like
record
to
to come.
sing? And that's not an easy song to sing,
It's
of
not.
course, and in
It's
front of
not.
all of your colleagues. What was that like for you as a performer?
You know what? My dream is to sing it before a Lakers game. I've already sung it before a Lakers minor league game. I don't tend to get nervous about those type of things. So to me, I did it. I did my best, and that's all you can do. Everybody says it went great, so I had
Now,
fun.
I don't know much about Lakers management these days, but they'd be crazy not to have you come and sing at a Lakers game. That would be outstanding. How often does that happen?
Lisa Estrada is the director of community affairs and director of entertainment for the Lakers. I've talked to her. She has my tape, and like I said, they had me sing at their minor league game, at
So
the Defenders
they're
League
checking
game
you out.
last year. They're checking me out.
Well, maybe I should call her because as a a 3-time public company chief marketing officer, I know a thing or two about marketing. Maybe I could give her some advice and to say that to have Judge Filer there would be very good marketing and PR.
I'm waiting on my call. Waiting on my call.
How awesome.
Yes, indeed. So, but just growing up, nothing was missing. My parents were always there. And more importantly, as they were forming the NAACP for the Compton, city of Compton, the Compton branch of the NAACP, I was able to sit in and watch my dad as he talks to all these individuals at the meetings. And that was when I realized that whomever this lawyer person is, people seem to really respect him and they carry a lot of weight because every time they would talk about where they're going to boycott, what type of picketing they were going to do or what strategy they were going to utilize, they would always ask this question, have you run this by the lawyer? Or has the attorney signed off on this? So right away, I'm saying, whoever this person is, everybody seems to like. And my father was actually going to law school in the evening at that time.
How,
So I said,
given he was
Daddy, I want to
working
be a
two
lawyer.
jobs, I'm sorry, sir.
He's
Given
working
he
two
was working
jobs.
two jobs and going to school,
That's
how
right.
long did it take him to actually fulfill his dream and become a lawyer?
Well, now that's part of the legend. That's
Okay,
part of the
okay.
legend
All
because
right. I would love to hear legendary stories.
he graduated from law school, Van Norman Law School, in 1967. Now, in order to be a lawyer, you have to graduate from law school, but you also have to pass this exam called the California Bar Exam.
Yes,
It's
sir.
only offered twice a year. It's always in July. It's always in February. If you pass it, that's fine. You get a letter saying you passed the California Bar Exam. There's no penalty for failing. If you don't pass it, you get your scores and you get an application to apply to take it again. And there's no penalty for failing it. You can take it as many times as you need, but it's only offered twice. So my father started taking the exam in 1967 when I was in elementary school. He didn't pass it. Took it twice that year. Took it twice in 1968. He didn't pass the exam. I'm in junior high school in 1969, 1970, 1971. He took the exam and he didn't pass it. Now, by this time, I know what he's doing. Prior to that, my mother would only say, we'd say, Mommy, where's Daddy going? Because he would disappear for a week in July or disappear for a week in February. And she would say, he's going to go take the bar. We really didn't quite know what it was. But by this time, I knew what it was, that it was a 3-day exam that you have to pass in order to be an attorney. Now, I went to college and, of course, 4 years of college, 3 years of law school, knowing that I want to be a lawyer because I knew what I wanted to be a lawyer when I was in the 3rd grade. Back when I'm sitting in on these meetings at my house because my father was the president of Compton NAACP, so all the meetings would be held at our house. That's how I was able to have this firsthand view of what was going on. So in the 3rd grade, I said, that's what I want to do. So I knew what he was doing by the time I was in junior high school and high school, and all of us did. And we hoped that he would pass because his dream was to be a lawyer. That's all he wanted to do, practice law in Compton. And that's what I wanted to do. So that was my dream, to practice law with my dad in Compton.
Now, sir, I hate to interrupt you, but I'm fascinated. Take me back to some of those NAACP meetings in your house as you were a young man. Yeah.
I'm a little boy.
You're a little boy.
I'm a little boy. And all I'm doing is I'm seeing Ted Baskerville, Doris Davis, Douglas Dollarhide, my father. Those are the 4 names that I definitely remember. Douglas Dollarhide actually went on to become the first Black mayor of the city of Compton. Doris Davis actually went on to become the first Black female mayor for the city of Compton. She's also city clerk. But I remember them sitting, talking, and I remember saying, what did the lawyers say? Have lawyers signed off on this? So to me, again, when my father realized that I had this penchant and interest in the law, he did steer me to that direction. So he was telling me, you know, make sure you get good grades, Scooter. He called me Scooter. My father never called me by my name of Kelvin. I never heard him call me Kelvin his entire life. Not once. Even when he would introduce me, and I was an elected official, and he introduced me many times and introduced me to many famous people and politically powerful people. And it was always, this is my son, Scooter.
and did anyone else call you Scooter?
Oh, yeah. All
okay.
my neighborhood friends call me Scooter.
Okay.
And still today, some of my friends who practice law will come in and occasionally let it slip by calling me Scooter when I'm on the bench. I just laugh and chuckle about it. So that's what I wanted to do. And I started reading up on what lawyers did and how they helped people and how they could appear in court and how they were, you know, people really respected them. So I knew that's what I wanted to do as well. So I was very, very fortunate to witness my father go through this. And
so what's going on with your dad all these years with the test?
He can't pass it. Now, here's the interesting thing.
How many years went by before he finally passed? Okay.
I'm leading up to that.
All right. I'm sitting back and listening.
I'm going to college. I'm in law school. My father's still taking the exam. Now, this is 1967. 1980, I graduate from law school. I take the exam. I sit with my father. I passed the exam the first time. My father didn't pass. So I had really mixed feelings when I went to go see my score, my results, and I saw my name and I was boom. But then I immediately looked at my dad's name and I didn't see it. And I went from one extreme to the other. But he was just happy for me. He was not down at all. And he never got down because he actually came close several times. If you fail the exam, they give you your score. If you pass it, all you get is a letter saying you passed, and that's all you want. But he needed 70% to pass. There were at least 3 occasions when he got 69%.
Oh, no.
There is no way I could have continued taking the exam. Now, I practiced 2 years with the state PD's office when after graduating from law school. I worked from 1980 to 1982 with the state PD's office. Then I opened up my own office in Compton, which was my dream and my father's dream. I immediately hired my father as a law clerk because during that time, of course, my father had gone to law school, but he also worked several jobs as a law clerk. He went from parking the cars at the city attorney's office. He clerked with the LA City Attorney's office. He served as a law clerk for 3 or 4 attorneys who also.
And I bet, was he the kind of guy who was making friends with them when he was parking?
Not only was he making friends with them, and he tells stories about how he used to park Johnny Cochran's car when Johnny was a city attorney for the city.
Come on.
Yes, and that's true because he introduced me to Johnny. And as I said, my father was not just, he was a well-known civil rights fighter. Well-known. And this is in the 50s. I'm talking about before he graduated from law school. They knew Maxcy Filer. So he also got involved in politics. All those individuals at the NAACP meeting, all those individuals who went on to become the mayor, city clerk, city attorney, he was the campaign manager for each one of them, city council.
Wow.
He was their campaign manager. Then in 1976, right before I went to college, an opening came up at Compton City Council, so he went on to the Compton City Council. So he became an elected official. He's also working for the county. So he's still doing these multiple jobs, and of course he's helping to raise all these children. Now, I passed the bar in 1980. 2 years state PD's office, wonderful experience. Had an opportunity to argue and win the case for the California Supreme Court, which is something that most 26-year-old lawyers don't have an opportunity to do. I did.
So, Your Honor, I have to slow you down then. So what? You're 26 years old.
Yes.
And so if you could maybe open this one up a little bit.
Okay. The State Public Defender's Office was a state agency that I clerked with when I was in law school. They knew.
And I hate to interrupt you, but there's some just amazing choices. What makes you decide to clerk there as opposed to clerk at some highfalutin law firm?
And good question. I'll tell you why. Because I went to UC Berkeley, which was a top 10 law school. So I could have clerked.
Well, and you're a banana slug, aren't you, sir?
That's right. UC Santa Cruz. That's right.
I'm talking to you right now from beautiful Santa Cruz.
All right. Yeah, Santa Cruz. And Santa Cruz was an excellent school in terms of preparing me for the rigors of law school. It really was.
Really? Why would you say that?
Because for one thing, it was a totally new environment for me. When I graduated from Compton High School, there was 750 graduates. I was number 13 out of 750. 95% of those graduates were Black. I'm going to UC Santa Cruz, which at that time was actually a highly touted school of the UC system. 6,000 students, including the graduate students, 148 Blacks. Totally
6,000 and there's 148?
148. Totally new environment for me, but which was good. I wanted that. I wanted to be away from home. I wanted to see what the real world is going to be like. Beautiful campus, up on the hill, all kinds of potential distractions. Also, they don't have grades. You didn't get grades. At that time, you got written narratives evaluating your work. I felt that was a challenge that I needed to go through, and I wanted to go through because I felt it would give me a better evaluation of what I was doing in preparation.
Because you get better feedback, you thought?
Exactly. And I went from being, like I said, number 13 out of 750 to being someplace where everybody was a top 10 student. Everybody was, which was not necessarily a rude awakening, but it was a needed awakening for me. And so it made sure that I buckled down. And again, that's where I think having my dad and mom as support services and all my siblings as well, they were always behind us. And I knew, again, I was going to law school. I knew that. And I like the fact that Santa
Cruz, there was no doubt in your mind you were not finishing once you graduated as a banana slug.
Exactly. And even when I graduated from high school, everybody else was happy and crying tears. I said, I got at least 2 more of these. I knew that. So Santa Cruz, even graduating from Santa Cruz, I knew I was going to law school. Luckily, I got into 4 to 7 law schools that I applied to. And Santa Cruz has an excellent reputation amongst the law schools, even though they didn't have grades.
That's so cool. I wasn't aware of that. That's very cool.
Excellent, excellent. And I verified that after I went to Berkeley, because I met and actually got involved with the admissions process at Berkeley. And Beth Cobb O'Neill, who's the admissions director, told me personally, she said, "Oh, we've always loved students from Santa Cruz because they've always done well." So I was real fortunate because I almost went to UC Davis, which is a great law school, up
Yeah.
and coming,
Yep.
named after Martin Luther King. I got into Loyola. I thought about going to Loyola down here. But when my father found out I got into Berkeley, he said, "If you got into Berkeley, you got to go to Berkeley." Now, having said that, I knew also that I didn't want to be anybody's, and I don't know if you ever saw the movie The Firm, where you're working as a grunt.
I did see that.
Years.
And you were
That wasn't what I wanted.
95 hours a week. And
that's right. I wanted to have the freedom to be able to take the type of cases that I wanted to take. I wanted to have the freedom to be able to take in different aspects of practice, whether it be criminal defense work, whether it be some civil practitioners, civil practice in terms of suing individuals or representing individuals. I was thought about being a sports agent or an agent for music. Who knows? But I wanted to have that flexibility. And I wanted to practice in Compton. I knew that's where I wanted to live and raise a family.
Well, why was staying home so important to you?
Because I wanted to help individuals who are from my hometown. And that was something that I witnessed firsthand through my parents, both my mother and father, always involved in all the different community things that I talked about, whether it be church, Little League, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, PTAs. My father was on the city council at that time. And in fact, actually, after I graduated, he convinced me to run and serve on the Compton School Board. So at the same time he was on the city council, I was on the Compton School Board for 12 years. So I knew that's what I wanted to do. So even though I was at Berkeley, great law school, I loved the experience, I never thought about doing a summer internship with a law firm because I knew that wasn't what I wanted. But the state PD's office was an agency, a state agency that represented individuals who had already been convicted of crimes, but they're entitled to have at least one free appeal. So the state would appoint an appellate lawyer to represent them. That intrigued me. And I also knew that that would enable me to really hone my research skills and my oral argument skills, because that's what you do. You research the law, you write appellate briefs, and then you argue the case in front of the appellate courts. And working with them the summer before my third year of law school, I was fascinated and amazed, and just I truly admired the dedication of the attorneys who work with that office, because they were dedicated to representing their clients, and that was the type of lawyer I wanted to be.
And Your Honor, were you? I have to assume, of course, I'm no lawyer, but I have to assume that environment as well is even higher stakes because this is the second time at bat, so to speak, right?
It is, and particularly if you deal with cases where the individuals, you know, who might have an actual defense or might be innocent, and so they're putting their life in your hands. And on special circumstances cases, meaning that they're looking at the death penalty, the state PD's office was the main agency that would handle those type of cases. Now, you would need some experience before you can handle that on appeal. And I only stayed there 2 years. And I really only stayed there 2 years by design because I knew what I wanted to do. So I was a little bit concerned because I loved working with them that summer. So when I graduated, I applied and they offered me a position, but I told them, I said, I can only stay about 2 years. I don't know if that's going to affect your decision in wanting to hire me because I'm only staying for a couple of years. And they said, no. They were very receptive to it. They liked the work that I did as a law student, and they hired me. I told them 2 years. I stayed 2 years and 3 days. And
so you overachieved on your commitment.
Yes, I did. About 3 days. But I tell you what, again, just to be in that atmosphere of witnessing dedication from attorneys who had only their client's best interest in mind, because these individuals have already been convicted, but they still knew that they were entitled to have representation on appeal. And I actually had the opportunity, as I said, to argue a case before the California Supreme Court. And as it turns out, the case was randomly assigned to me, but it had an interesting issue.
So how did such a young man, though, get randomly assigned? Like, how does that even happen?
Because the state PD's office, they had such confidence in their attorneys. They didn't cherry pick the cases and say, this is an issue that might be hot, so we're going to give it to the more experienced attorney. They could. And to a certain extent, they did that in terms of they wouldn't send me a death penalty case yet because I hadn't had enough time. But amongst the cases that were randomly assigned was this case called People versus Alonzo Taylor. And it dealt with the issue of whether or not a defendant has a right to wear civilian clothes in front of a jury. That was an issue that had
If
not
the
been
defendant has the right to wear civilian clothes, so he's not in his prison uniform.
Exactly. Not in his jail, in jail blues, as they call it.
Yes. And what was he convicted of, sir?
Murder.
He was convicted of murder.
And the irony was this: Alonzo Taylor was from Compton.
Wow.
And not only that, his mother knew my father because he's in prison, of course. He'd been sentenced to life. So I contacted his mother, letting know the case had been signed. She said, Maxcy Filer is my city councilman. The irony of that, and for the case that had been assigned to me. Now, I knew that was a hot issue because the Supreme Court had not issued a final ruling. But the state PD's office, they let me handle it through the first level of appeals, which is to the Court of Appeal. They affirmed. But then I had a chance to petition the California Supreme Court for hearing. And just as we hoped, they accepted it. So I argued the case, 26 years old, in front of the California Supreme Court.
And what was your argument, sir?
My argument is that the case, his conviction, because he was convicted of first-degree murder, his conviction should be reversed on two main grounds. Number one, he was denied equal protection under the law because let's assume that he had the same charge pending and he was a wealthy person and he was able to make bail. Then that means that he would be out of custody and he would be walking into court in front of the jury wearing a three-piece suit, looking suited and booted, as we like to call it. Whereas with Alonzo, because he was poor, he was in custody, and because his family was not able to get the clothes to the jail in time, the sheriff didn't search him. So the judge at that time, who turned out to be a friend of mine, the judge at that time, who was a real good friend of my father's, he said, no, you are not gonna, your family should have gotten those clothes down there in time. I'm not gonna let you wear the clothing. We're going to trial right now. The jury's here. I don't want to keep the jury waiting. That was an error because he was not provided equal protection under the law, because for 2 of the 3 days he's in trial, he was sitting there wearing jail blues and it said LA County Jail on the back. He testified he's wearing the jail clothing, said LA County Jail on the back. So the jurors subconsciously are going to be looking at him saying, what did he do? Or he must have done something pretty bad, or he must be a bad guy because he's still in custody. Equal protection. We're all entitled to the same protections of the law. The other argument was he was denied due process of law because he did not have the presumption of innocence because he wasn't wearing the garb of innocence. And so that's what the case came to be known as, the garb of innocence case. And on those two grounds, I argued that his conviction had to be reversed because it was clearly prejudicial. And it was so interesting because when I gave my argument, I mean, that's the most prepared I've ever been. And I argued, and the justices, instead of challenging me, they were asking me questions for clarification. And I tell you, that felt good because even then I'm saying, wow. And ironically enough, the judge who was asking most of the questions was Alan Broussard, who was the only Black judge on the California Supreme Court at that time.
Interesting.
And when the Attorney General got up to present their argument and he was lighting into him, I felt good about it. And as it turns out, the decision was unanimous. It was 7-0, and his conviction was reversed. And so that case set the law, and that case is relied upon to this day. If anyone is desirous of wearing jail clothes, we have to make it available to them, even if we have to give them time to go get some clothes. And I even had to keep clothes in my chambers, so that if the defendant says he can't afford them or he doesn't have them, I have them available for him. And I do kind of, I say, I know this issue well.
That might be an understatement, sir.
People versus Taylor, 31 Cal 3rd, 488.
Wow. And what year was that? Remind me again.
That was in 1982. Now, shortly after when that case came out was when I left the office. And again, I think I may have
now, are you the hottest prospect in history? If this is now you're on the job market?
No. I'm just a young man.
Well, you just won at the Supreme Court of California.
But I wasn't even thinking about trying to get a job someplace else.
But you didn't have law firms calling you and crawling all over you?
No, I didn't. And I wouldn't have listened had they called because I had already started laying the groundwork for opening my own practice. My parents.
So what was it about you that not just made you, of course, want to be a lawyer, but wanted to be an entrepreneurial lawyer? You wanted your own practice. You could have, at that point, I mean, you got to be the hottest young lawyer in the state.
No, no, no.
Oh,
I'm
come
still
on.
gonna love
How
your
many
daughter.
guys
No,
go to 26, 27 years old winning? I mean,
you know
you could
what?
have cashed in that ticket.
Let me tell you, I wasn't thinking about that because I was just doing my job. And again, I do try. I try and lead a humble life, even at that early age. You know, my parents, they instilled in us that we don't do things for fame or glory or to bring attention to ourselves. I've never been that way. Looking back, however, I said, you know what? 26 years old, black. How many lawyers have argued and won a case before the California Supreme Court? And that case is still good law. So I have thought about that.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if there's any way I could document it or any stats or anything along those lines, but still, my dream
But you
was to
wanted to be an
open.
entrepreneur. You wanted to open your own
That's right.
practice. And
That's right.
so what was it about having your own practice that called to you so loudly?
It was so that I could be my own boss, and so that I would have the flexibility to. Actually, I said, you know, being a sports agent would be pretty cool too, because I love sports. I'm a diehard Laker fan, always have been, and I thought that would be pretty cool to have that option.
And
And
is
same thing in
basketball your
Peters.
number one sport?
Basketball is my number one sport by far. If I were to show you my room, I got basketball stuff all around here, and I'm a big fan. And when you come into my courtroom, people know what team I'm for. I got Lakers. I got Lakers stuff in my courtroom. Yes,
So
indeed.
if I'm a Clippers fan and I'm convicted of something and I come into your courtroom, I might be in some trouble.
No, because I'm still going to treat you fairly. I'm still going to treat you fairly. And I've had individuals who've come in and kind of insinuated that, particularly with the Lakers traded Shaq, some person came in and the case, it was a small claims case that I was presiding over at that time. And it actually involved someone stealing a Shaq jersey. And he wanted to know, could he bring that in as evidence? I said, no, you aren't bringing any Shaq jerseys in here. This is after he had signed with the Miami and left the Lakers.
You're just
I was just
disgusted.
teasing.
I don't need to see that.
I was just teasing. I was teasing. I really was. So, but that was my dream, to have my own practice in Compton. And I was preparing for it even while I was at the state PD's office. I saved my money. I didn't worry about buying a car. I didn't get married at that time. My mother and father both helped me to buy a building, which was unbelievably a stroke of good fortune for us. I started buying my library, got a copy machine, so that November 1984, I'm ready to go. 1982, I'm sorry, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Now, I was already an elected official at this time because I ran and was elected to Compton School Board in 1981.
I bet you're a great politician.
My dad is a great politician. I was not a great politician. Let me tell
You
you.
are not. I'm surprised to hear
No.
that.
Because I didn't like politics. I didn't like the horse trading that's expected to go on with politics, and neither did my father. But I did like the fact that I was able to at least try and do my best to change things. But it became so difficult because you're proposing something, and you're proposing it because it's in the best interest of the school community, your best interest of the community, it's best for the school system. And individuals are saying, well, you know, if I support you on this, are you going to support me on that? No. I'm not going to support you because you supported me. I'm going to support if you propose something I think is best for the community or it's best for the children. Yes, but I don't like the horse trading that goes on with politics. And I was exposed to a lot of that. Thank goodness my dad, again, by not only teaching me by his words and deeds, how you can be involved, you can use politics, and you can still make sure that you do the right thing. So I was very fortunate.
And so
That
what was it?
also,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, I
Go
was
ahead.
going to say that also gave me an opportunity to make several connections with all the local officials, because my father knew all of them. And anytime we go to
And was it
events, he'd
hard
take
for
me
you
with him.
to, I mean, at that time, you're a young man, you know, you're spreading your wings, so to speak, and your father is this huge figure for you in your life, and of course in the community. Was there any a part of that was difficult, where you felt you were in his shadow, or maybe you wouldn't live up to
Oh, no.
his ideal
Oh,
or any of
no.
that? No.
Oh, no, 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 no. No, no,
Why
no, no,
not?
no. Because my father, number one, we weren't raised that way. We weren't worried about competing with others, and we certainly weren't going to compete with each other. I idolized my father. And I'm telling you, when I would go with him, he's opening doors for me. He's introducing me to individuals who later on are really going to benefit me, the fact that I have this connection. Plus, I'm watching him and I'm learning from him how you can be a man, how you can vote on the issues, and how you can disagree with somebody without becoming disagreeable. I saw all this firsthand. So that was the way I conducted myself when I was on the school board. And it also helped me to become an effective trial attorney. And that's what I fell in love with, trying cases. Man, I love being a litigator. I love representing individuals who are charged with offenses. Now, I had to work my way up, you know, from misdemeanors, petty thefts, DUIs, to low-grade felonies, to the point where I'm representing now the serious felonies, whether it be murder, rape, robbery, kidnapping, attempted murder. The last 5 or 6 years of my legal career, I was always in trial, and I loved it. So that's when I said earlier about my dream job being an attorney. That's what I love doing.
So maybe walk me through, if you wouldn't mind, one of your favorite trials.
I had a trial where I was representing a young lady who's charged with murder. And it was actually a case that got some publicity. This is before the internet, so it wasn't on the internet, but was on the news because she was a battered woman. Before people referred to individuals as battered women. She was at home, and her boyfriend / husband, common law husband, would routinely beat her and would threaten her. She was getting tired of the beatings and getting tired of being abused by him. So he threatens her. He thinks that she's having an affair or seeing somebody else. And he tells her, I'm coming over there now to put an end to this. So she's terrified, thinking that because he's threatened to kill her. He said, I'll put an end to this. I'm coming over there. I'll take care of you right now. She had gotten a gun. So she's in her apartment. She sees him pull up. He gets out with the gun behind his hand. He's coming up to her door. He sees her standing in her doorway. He starts shooting at her. But she now has her gun. She's shooting back at him. They are having a shootout in a housing complex. Neither one of them is hitting each other, but they are shooting at each other. My client, Janie Leday is her name. She's inside her home, hiding behind the door, shooting at him. She misses him.
He's still outside.
He's still outside. He's hiding behind trees as he's shooting at her. She shoots at him, misses him, of course. The bullet goes literally a quarter of a mile across the housing complex. There's a baby girl who's celebrating her birthday. She's literally jump roping outside in her front yard, and she's jump roping. Boom! Bullet hits her in her head. She falls down. Killed.
Oh my
instantly.
God.
So my client and her boyfriend are charged with murder. Now, this case it's a tragic case because she was engaging in this.
And neither your client nor her boyfriend ever shoots each other in this interaction.
Never shoot each other. Never shoot each other. Now, my defense at the time, I'm not sure how much you know about what motions can be made, but I pretty much knew what I was going to do. And my defense was going to be my client was acting in self-defense because the co-defendant, they were tried together, but I'm arguing and I established through the testimony of all the witnesses who shot first. I established that my client had been abused. She was terrified. She was afraid. And she was shooting at him only because he started shooting at her. And she was in her home. So at the end of the prosecution's case, I asked the judge to dismiss the murder charge against my client because she had complete self-defense. So transferred intent, if she had self-defense at shooting against the co-defendant, she did not have the intent to commit murder. And the judge agreed with me and granted what we call an 1118.1 motion, that's the penal code section, and granted an 1118.1 motion against my client. Unheard of for a murder.
So that's it. She's done.
That was it. The DA went berserk, but the judge made the right call. That was one of my more interesting criminal cases.
That's fascinating. And it seems right. I mean, what person from inside their house is going to be shooting somebody outside their house unless you determine they're crazy, unless they're in fear of their life?
And I was able to establish that she knew that the co-defendant carried a gun and that he would use the gun. And that's one of the reasons why she was terrified, because you have to have a belief that you're truly acting in self-defense. Janie still comes by to see me occasionally. She relocated to Texas. She's had all kinds of problems, personal issues, but every now and then she comes by and stops in and peeks her head in. So that was one of the more interesting cases that I tried as a criminal defense lawyer. But I love the practice. I love it. I really
and remind me, Your Honor, how many years you practiced?
11 years in private practice. So a total of 13 years. And I didn't want to think about changing careers at all. But the judges of the Compton Municipal Court, they asked me to apply to be a commissioner. And that was the only time that I really thought about changing careers, or at least considering doing something different. So I did my research about what a commissioner does, a court commissioner, and found out that a court commissioner basically sits as a judge on an everyday basis, but they are not appointed by the governor. They are hired by the other judges to sit and hear the cases. You do the exact same thing a judge does. Your title's different. You wear a robe. And the only distinction is, as a commissioner, the parties must stipulate that you can hear the case. Otherwise, you're exactly a judge for purposes of hearing that case. So,
my only experience, Your Honor, being a commissioner is the few times I've married people and they make me a commissioner for that day for that purpose.
Yes.
But that's the closest I ever got. But I thought it was an interesting. I thought it was just an interesting distinction. And I have to promise to defend the Constitution of the United States and the whole thing, right? It's to be a commissioner for the day.
You're carrying out what they call subordinate judicial duties. That's the phrase that they use. So, and I loved being a commissioner, to be very frank. And I was concerned once I got.
What, you didn't miss? You didn't miss your practicing?
Yes, I did. I did, and I still do.
Because you seem like a guy that's got a lot of fight in you.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, reach a point when I'm thinking about the past couple of years, I'll tell you, I'm thinking about at some point maybe even going back to that. If
going back into private practice.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. That's fascinating.
It would be a unique opportunity for me. But you know what? Let me make sure. I'll get to that. Let me tell you why it'd be unique. So I'm now a commissioner, but before a commissioner, I was hired in 1993. But before I was hired in 1991, I was still on the school board. And one Tuesday in November in 1991, I'm in executive session at the school board meeting, so we're not to be disturbed unless it's an emergency. And my brother comes to the door. Now, my brother Anthony, he's also an attorney. So he's a lawyer. He works for legal aid. He's always worked for legal aid. He's 3 years behind me. Anthony comes to the door. He is holding his son, Tony, who's a baby at that time. This is 1991. Ironically enough, Tony just took the California bar exam 3 weeks ago. So he's waiting on his results.
You guys are like a lawyer manufacturing facility.
I'm gonna get to that, and that's why I might even go back. Because think about Anthony, Tony, but Anthony says I'm
beginning to connect the dots.
Let me tell you what he says. He says, "Daddy passed the bar." I said, "What?"
In 91?
1991, my father took the bar exam 24 years, 48 times. And on the 48th attempt, he passed the exam.
Wow.
That's the perseverance. And people, after that, I tell you, for 3 months straight, the city of Compton partied because everybody knew about his journey. I went back in to talk to my colleagues.
Did everybody in town know he'd been taking the test all this time?
Yeah. Absolutely, because they had written articles about him and they knew about his perseverance. They knew that's what he wanted to do. He'd been on the city council for almost 15 years at that point. And they knew that he was taking the bar. And frankly, some people made fun of him. I never did. And we never thought any less of him. This is what he wanted to do. And they used to say, "Daddy, why do you keep taking the bar exam?" He says, "I want to be a lawyer. In order to be a lawyer, you have to pass the California bar exam. In order to pass the California bar exam, you have to take the California bar exam." When I went back in to tell my colleagues, first thing they said, when I said, "My father passed, I'm so happy." They gave me a strange look like, "Why are you happy if your father passed away?" I said, "No, he passed the bar exam." So they knew. We went out, informed the public, ended that meeting, and I'm telling you, the city of Compton partied for 3 months straight. This is before the internet now. So if there had been an internet, the internet would have blown up. Every news station that there was, channel 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, every single one of them interviewed my father. And
That's
every
so
time they
great.
interviewed him, I was right next to him.
Yeah,
Because
of course
I'm
you
a
were.
lawyer. This is great advertisement for my firm. So
Were you
it's
wearing a
wonderful
T-shirt or with your phone number on it or something like that?
I didn't need to do that because he would always point out, he would say, oh, I'm gonna be Scooter's partner. He's still calling me Scooter. So Scooter's gonna make me a partner, although I never agreed to that. I had to go along with that. So it was a wonderful time, and I was just so happy for him, you know, and I still sometimes I well up in tears. I just think about the fact that he didn't give up and he just kept going. And I kid you not, he got letters and postcards from all over the world from people who were saying they heard about his journey, they heard about his story, and they decided to pursue their own dreams. So it's a very inspirational story, and it's one about not giving up and just keep going forward, and your dreams can ultimately come true. And I use it all the time when I go and talk to students, whether they're law students or otherwise, and I just let them know that whatever your dream is, you can do it because my father did it. So I practiced with him for 2 years. Then I was hired as commissioner in 1993.
How exciting!
Yes.
And then I assume commissioner opens the door to judge.
Interesting enough, because I don't want you to think that my journey has been peaches and cream. Because even though, like I said, I've been blessed, and I have been, and I love my job I'm currently doing. However, commissioners are hired by the judges. In order to be appointed to a judgeship, it has to be done by the governor's office. Now, I told you my dad was a big fighter and staunch Democrat. I was a staunch Democrat. There was no way in the world a Republican governor was going to appoint me. It just was not going to happen. I had written too many letters to the editor. I had made too many negative comments about our Republican governor at the time, Pete Wilson, because I was saying he wasn't favoring and supporting education as I thought he should. And since I was on the school board, my letters to the editor would get printed. I was an attorney. My letters to the editor would get printed. So they knew who I was. It just was not going to happen because whether you like it or not, it's somewhat political. Now, having said that, also, I had some issues. I had a marriage that fell apart. And it almost destroyed me, to be very frank. And I'm so glad that I actually had my job as a commissioner because that gave me an anchor. And it gave me some stability and something to hold on to and do during the course of the day as my marriage is falling apart. And I don't know why it's falling apart. It's very, very tough on me. I tried in dealing with that fact that my marriage was crumbling. I tried to deal with it by self-medicating through alcohol, which obviously was the wrong thing to do. I developed a drinking problem. And I developed a drinking problem to the point where, thank goodness, it didn't affect my job and that I was never drinking on the job, but I would binge drink on the weekends occasionally, which is still the sign of an alcoholic, which I was and am. I ended up getting a DUI. So now, even though I'm doing my job as a commissioner, I'm a Democrat, marriage is falling apart. These are things they did look at, and I have a DUI. So those are things that obviously
it's not looking good for a commissioner with a DUI, right?
That's right. That's right. However, you know, my family was very, very supportive, my brothers and sisters and my daughters. And ultimately, I realized that alcohol is not the way to go. And it doesn't deal with the problems. Problems still there. And thank goodness, I was able to stop drinking completely. September 2000, I remember the date well, and haven't had a drink since then. But, you know, coming from my dad.
Did you just quit cold turkey, Your Honor?
No, I saw my daughters praying for me because I was involved in an accident and they were in the car. And actually,
your daughters were in the car for your DUI?
In the car. Thank goodness. Not a DUI. That's part of the blessing. That was it could have been a DUI. It should have been a DUI.
Oh, it wasn't a DUI.
I had a DUI in 1996. I tried to stop drinking from that point. Part of the recovery process is you sometimes relapse. And in the year 2000, I did relapse right when we got a new house, actually. And that was my thinking that I can celebrate. You can't. And I was drinking and I was driving and I shouldn't have been. And I had my daughters in the car with me.
I see. Got it.
And I had a one-car vehicle accident Those officers arrived on the scene. My daughters were outside. I'm in the back of a patrol car. They are on their knees praying to God that my daddy not go to jail. Please don't let them take my daddy to jail. Praying, just praying in front of me. And I saw that. And that was it. That was my bottom. Now, these angels that were police officers, they didn't arrest me. They took me to my house. I don't even know how they knew where my house was. My daughters didn't know the address. They were too little. I just moved there. I hadn't even moved in yet. They took me to the house, called my brother, and that was it. I haven't had a drink. I haven't come close to having a drink since then. No charges were ever filed. Nothing ever happened. I self-reported to my bosses because I just wanted them to know. But thank goodness, I haven't had a drink since then. And not only that, I put in my application, and in the year 2000, they had a new governor, and the new governor was Gray Davis. Now, let me show you the way things work. Gray Davis was the chief of staff of Governor Jerry Brown the first time he was governor in the 70s. He was the chief of staff. In the 70s, Jerry Brown, governor the first time, said he wanted to go to Compton. Gray Davis said, well, I know this guy who I was in the Young Democrats in the 50s, who is now a city councilman. His name is Maxcy Filer. So let's go to his house. So Gray Davis brought Governor Jerry Brown to our house when my father was on city council in the late 70s while I'm still in law school. Now, 2000, who was the governor? Gray
Davis.
So,
and he remembered you from all those years back.
He didn't remember me, but let me tell you what happened.
Did you remind him?
I did remind him, but I didn't remind him before he appointed me. But I had made all these connections. Everybody wrote a letter of recommendation for me. Every elected official in this area: Tom Bradley, Teresa Hughes, Merv Donnelly, Herb Wesson was now the current president of the city council. He was one of my biggest supporters. Danny Bakewell, all of them supported me. And I give credit to my dad. I met them and they knew me, but they knew me through my dad, Johnny Cochran, very good friend of mine. So when it came time to be interviewed, I was interviewed by Bert Pines, who was the appointment secretary. He knew my dad. He knew me. Now, I feel I was qualified because I was doing a good job as a commissioner, but it doesn't hurt to have those connections. And let me tell you else. So I was appointed August 2002. I was appointed to judgeship. Gray Davis. And when I interviewed, Bert Pine said they were aware of the divorce because they're concerned about those things. And they were aware of the DUI. And they just wanted to make sure that was in my history and it was in my past. And it was. So I remember seeing a month after I was appointed to a judgeship, I went to an event, and who was standing there but Governor Gray Davis? I go up to him and I say, Governor Davis, my name is Kelvin Filer. I just want to thank you for appointing me to a judgeship last month. He looked me right in the eyes. He said, oh, how's Maxcy doing? He called him by his first name. He said, how's Maxcy doing? So it's just interesting. It just shows you how those things that happened a while ago, that if you do the right thing in a strange way, it can come back and help you. It's going to come around and help you.
Now, I have to ask you, Your Honor, how do you find out that you've been appointed? How does that work?
There's a process you have to apply.
Yeah.
And when you apply, they will send out these requests for comments to all the attorneys and who work in your area and all the judges in the county, and they compile that. Then you go to an interview with a commission called the Jenny Commission. It's called the Judicial Nominations Evaluation Commission. They will interview you, and they will ask you to deal with any negative complaints they may have received. Usually, when you get that close, that means that the governor is at least considering you. So you know you're being considered. And then depending upon how that goes, you can make a determination. Okay, well, maybe I've got a chance. Then you're going to be interviewed by the appointment secretary. And if that goes well, then you can almost tell that you're close. But still, it's the governor's call. It's the governor makes that final call. And the only reason I knew I was kind of close is my interview went very, very well. And then when I was interviewed by Burt Pines, the presiding judge started telling me, okay, I just want you to know I got a call from the governor's office. You know, the people who were close by said, just stay near your phone. And sure enough, I got that call, and it was a great feeling.
And who calls you?
The governor.
It is the governor.
But the governor's office calls, and
Yes.
then the judicial appointment secretary. And what they do is they call, and it was Burt Pines, and he said, Commissioner Filer, he said, good news. The governor has decided to appoint you to judgeship in Los Angeles Superior Court. And then what they do is this. They tell you, they're going to read the press release to you verbatim. So they read it, and then they say, is there anything, and that gives you a whole history and stuff. Then it says, is there anything you want to add? And I said, could you add in at the very beginning that I was born, raised, and educated in Compton, California? And he said, I knew you were going to ask for something like that. That's what he told me. And so that and then they tell you this. This is the weird kind of strange thing, though. They always call you the day before, and then they swear you to secrecy, say you cannot tell anyone, because they want to make sure that it comes from the governor's office first. And as soon as the press release is released, then you get a call saying it's gone out. You can tell people. So it was cool. I had to sit as a commissioner. I had to sit, and I saw my dad, and I couldn't tell him. I couldn't tell anybody. Daddy, I'm gonna be appointed.
So you couldn't tell your dad. Did you tell your wife?
No, I wasn't married at that time.
Oh, you were not married at the time. Okay.
No, I wasn't married at that time.
So it was easy not to tell her because she was your ex-wife.
But I did. I'll be very frank. I did tell my brother.
You gotta. Yeah. Everybody tells at least one person, right? You gotta tell. You're gonna explode otherwise.
It was just. I had to tell somebody. He's my best friend.
And so, what happened when the press release came out that day, and a few days after that?
I was sitting there on the bench. I was a commissioner. I'm here in preliminary hearings, and I get a message on my phone, and I know it's from them. So then I called back and said, the press release is gone out. You can tell anybody. Now, I kid you not. People started calling, but I wanted to just do my job. So I'm on the bench, and people are outside. They're waving at me. My colleagues now, my judges, they're coming by and they're sticking their head in, giving me the thumbs up and stuff. And then my father comes in. Now, at this time, my father is having health issues, and he comes in. He's carrying the press release, crying. Because the Compton Bulletin newspaper was right next to my law office. They got the press release. They took it over to him. So he comes in. I tried to call him. I couldn't reach him. I said, where's Daddy? He was walking over here. He's carrying a press release, crying because he saw that I'd been appointed. So that was another great experience.
And so what's that like when your dad's crying and there's the press release?
Well, my father was very emotional about all his kids, and he would cry at the drop of the hat. When I left to go to college, he came in, kissed me, he was crying. When I passed the bar, of course, he was very, very elated, and he was crying. And I know what that's like, because I've had opportunities to cry as well, because just 3 months ago, I was able to swear my daughter in as a lawyer.
Wow.
And she took the bar exam twice, and I barely made it through it. In fact, I was crying, but I was telling the history about how I told my story about being in third grade, knowing I was going to be a lawyer. And then I pointed out that I actually kept a card that she gave me when she was in the third grade, where their teachers had them write out what you want to be. Hers said, Maxcy Filer, future lawyer. And I kept that. And right before I swore in, I brought that out and showed it to everybody.
No.
And then I actually, on her 10th birthday, I was a commissioner. And when I took the bench that day, I opened the court by saying, good morning, everyone. Today is June 22nd, June 22nd, 2000. And I would like to announce that this is my daughter's birthday. And I expect that in the year 2016, she's going to walk through here and announce herself as Maxcy Filer, attorney at law. I missed it by 1 year. But when I did that, I read that, I kept that record. So I had the official transcript. And of course, when I was right before I swore in, I was recanting these stories to the individuals who were there.
So, because of course, excuse my ignorance, I just want to make sure I underscore this. As the judge, where she's going to be practicing, you swear her in.
I swear in because I'm a judge, and I can swear in anybody in the state of California. And there was no way in the world I wasn't going to swear in my daughter. I swear in people all the time too. But that was a dream of mine that's definitely has come true. And that leads back to
So
what I was
what's it
saying.
like to stand there? Are you in the courthouse, I assume?
Oh, yeah.
You're in the courthouse, and as multiple lawyers are being sworn in at the same time. Is it a ceremony? No. So it's just
I
her.
had just her. I had a separate ceremony for her. Invited our families and friends, put her in the seat, had family friends. We had people come up and talk and talk about her and tell stories. And then I said my piece. Of course, that's when I started crying. I could make it through the part when I was rereading what I had said in 2000. In fact, I have it on video. Of course, I even said, "Oh, got it." I thought I was going to make it through without crying. I was able to administer the oath without tearing up, but barely. But it was one of the greatest days of my life for sure.
Wow!
So she's
Congratulations.
with my other nephew, Lance, who's also an attorney. So I say that to go back to my thoughts in terms of where I might go with my career, because I love my job. Again, I think I have the greatest job in the world. But in 2022, I will have been on the bench as a judge for 20 years. I was a commissioner for 8.5 years. I could retire in 2022 and get basically my full retirement as a judge. I'm already taking out retirement as a commissioner. I could pay $50 and be a lawyer again. And I might do that if my daughter and my two nephews, because I have another nephew, I have one nephew who's already an attorney, Lance. I have another nephew who's waiting on his bar results, and I'm expecting to swear him in November. And if they want me to come in and work with them, I would probably leave the bench for that. That would be the only thing that would make me leave the bench.
Wow. That would certainly be an extraordinary way to complete your career, assuming that was going to be the final spot.
And
Now, I got to ask you.
I'm turning to my father because I could see myself sitting back, wearing white socks, twiddling my thumbs, and trying to give everybody legal advice.
Well, and if you tell them you're their new partner, like, what are they going to say?
Oh, they probably wouldn't let me come back as a partner, although I would do it pro bono. I wouldn't ask for a fee.
Well, forget the economics, just that you're now going to be showing up and you're going to be in their face. Like, what are they going to say?
That's right.
No dad, no uncle. You can't come. We don't think you're qualified.
That's right.
We think you got lousy opinions about stuff.
That would be great. I might do it. I don't know.
Well, it's definitely an exciting consideration. The good news is you got a couple of years, right?
Yes, I do. I was just reelected as a judge, so I have all the way through 2022.
How long is the election period in California?
6 years.
It's every 6 years.
Every 6 years. Now, and if you are not challenged, your name doesn't even go on the ballot. So this past 2016, my name didn't even go on the ballot. I was deemed reelected because nobody filed to run against me. And most judges, no one files against them.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's common practice that it's not until a slot is open, so to speak.
Exactly. Unless somebody challenges you, which most times a sitting judge, if you're doing a good job, the attorneys aren't going to challenge you because, number one, it'd be difficult to win. And particularly with me, I still have some political support as a result of my name, frankly, and my dad's name. So I'm not afraid of anybody challenging me. If they did, they wouldn't win. I can say that with confidence, say that humbly. But usually it's not done unless there's a problem, and that hasn't been the case as well.
Yeah.
So that most times it's only when a seat is open, meaning that the governor didn't fill it, that you'll have individuals who will run for that seat. So if you're not challenged, then your name doesn't even go on the ballot, and you're just deemed reelected.
I see. And so in that context, the 6 year it's somewhat ceremonial unless essentially something unusual is happening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I have to ask you sort of, what's your average day like? Like, what's it like to show up at work, and what do you do? And, how does it work? I have no judge-like experience.
Okay. Well, right now, it depends upon what your assignment is. My assignment is always, I've had civil before where I've done small claims matters. I had civil where I've done limited cases where you're hearing civil cases where individuals are suing each other for money usually. But most of my career has been spent in the criminal courtroom, which I love. Now, the last 4 or 5 years, I've had what's called a long cause criminal assignment, which is the plum assignments, goes back to why I feel like I've always had a blessed life, which means that instead of having a calendar, I try one case at a time. So when I come in, I'm usually in trial. And the cases that I'm trying are usually the cases going to last 5 days or longer. Those are usually the murder cases, attempted murder, rape, robbery, kidnapping. Almost all of them are gang related. That means that I'm hearing and seeing things about sad events that obviously have occurred in our community, but I'm also hearing interesting cases. And I'm also getting experienced attorneys who are on both sides of the table. So it's just, again, it's the best assignment you can have. I love sitting and litigating and hearing the cases. I love being able to watch and observe attorneys who know what they're doing and who are fighting for their respective positions. The one thing that can get kind of tough is sentencing. I have a sentencing tomorrow. Because sentencing is when obviously the individual's already been convicted, and now I'm going to have to impose what I think is the appropriate sentence. Given the fact that most of my cases are murder cases, most of them involve a gang allegation, and most of them involve some sort of weapon, whether it's a knife or a gun. If the person's been convicted, it's over. It's over in terms of the amount of time you're going to get, because 25 for first degree murder, 25 for the gang allegation, and 10 for the gun use. That's 60 years of life right there.
And is that sort of mandatory for each of those?
It's mandatory.
So if I'm guilty for all three of those things, I get 60 years. Is that right?
That's right. You'd have to find very, very unusual circumstances. And for a murder case, it's just not going to be there. Now, you know, if the gang allegation was kind of weak, I can sometimes strike that. Sometimes I can strike the sentence on some of the priors. But if you're talking about murder and a weapon was used, that's it. And a lot of times, and most times, the defendants are young men. They're young men of color. It brings me no joy to have to sentence these individuals to such a long period of time. It's probably going to be for, if not all of their life, for the majority of their lives. I don't like doing that, but I have to follow the law. And sometimes in sentencing, we have what we call victim impact statements. I'm going to have some victim impact statements tomorrow, where the victims, the surviving victims, have an opportunity to come and tell the court what impact the defendant's conduct and a crime has had on their lives. Those can be very emotional, because we're going to hear individuals talk about what it's like because they no longer have a brother, or they no longer have a father, or they no longer have a son. In this instance, it was a spouse who was killed, and the mother's ill, and she's going to come tomorrow, and I know it's going to be very, very emotional. But as a judge, I can't reveal any emotion. I have to sit and I have to listen, because I have to make sure that I'm still being objective, and that I'm still going to be able to administer the law without allowing my emotions to sway me. I've had fathers come up and tell me that they are never going to have grandchildren because the defendant killed their daughter. They're never going to be able to walk their daughters down the aisle. Fathers just crying, rivers of tears. And we have to hear that. It can be a little bit, somewhat of healing, maybe some therapeutic benefit for them to get it out there and to say that. At the same time, the defendant's family is there. And I have to be cognizant of that the defendant's family didn't ask for this, and it wasn't their fault that the defendant did what he or she did. And so I try to be cognizant of both sides. But that can be kind of tough. That's the toughest part of being a judge over criminal cases, without a doubt. And again, I hear the worst of the worst, but easily the most difficult thing to do is sentencing. And we want to get it right, and we want to be fair and humane about it. So
how do you make those decisions? I can't imagine anything like that personally. And more importantly, if I try to put myself in your shoes, and I think about it in the context of our society and our world, there are few jobs that are as important or as seminal or as pivotal as judging over a murder trial or any significant allegation along those lines, where, of course, people's lives on all sides are at stake. And so how do you do that, Judge? As a person, as a human being? I understand the legal, I don't understand the legal intricacies, but I mean more as a human being. You're such a clearly have a big heart and are a big person. How do you deal with that as a person?
Well, again, I just think it was fortunate that the life that I've had and the careers that I've had have really kind of like prepared me for this, because being able to observe my dad to make sure that whatever you do, you got to follow the law. And if you do the right thing, then that's all you can do. And that's where my spirituality actually comes into place there, because I believe in Jesus Christ, and I've always been. And I've always felt like So long as you're doing the right thing or doing your best to do the right thing, that's really all anyone can ask. And I believe in following the law. So the types of cases that I hear, the law will lay out the options for me. And if it's first degree murder, it's going to be 25 to life. If there was a gun used, it's going to be 10 years plus that. If there was a gun used during the course of a gang killing, that's going to be another 25 years. I don't get any joy in doing that, but I believe that I have to follow the law. And knowing that, I think also when I was a member of the school board, I again learned how to not let politics infect my decision making. The same process applies here. I don't allow societal concerns or societal events or past cases. None of that affects how I'm going to rule. My decision is based upon this case, these facts, and the law that applies to these facts. And once you've done that, then you got to let it go. Let it go and get ready for the next one. And that was the way I practiced law, and that's the way I was on the school board. That's the way I tried to live my life.
And how do you blow off steam? I mean, obviously you've recovered from your challenges with alcohol. You must have to blow off steam somehow.
I love watching sports. I love going to the Lakers games. I love watching the Lakers. I love music. I love hanging out with my daughters, my two daughters.
Karaoke?
Karaoke. I have great support system. And again, my daughters are just unbelievable. They're my best friends. And, it's just, that is what keeps going. Now, also, I recently found something maybe 4 or 5 years ago when I got a new car. And I remember my father just passed away in 2011. But I remember he told me, he said, the one car that he always wanted was a convertible. So as kind of like a tribute to my dad, I said, you know what, I'm gonna get me a convertible. And I did. And let me tell you, I did not realize how much I love driving around in my convertible. It's a different experience for me. And it it just kind of soothes me. And it's just, it refreshes me and it re-energizes me. And I tell you, between those things, between music, I love going to the movies, love hanging out with my brothers, my family, and particularly my daughters. I keep busy with some community fairs as well. I'm very involved in my church. I'm very involved in a variety of community outreach programs through the court, including teen court that we have right over at Compton High School. So the schedule is busy and it just keeps me going, and doing the different things kind of like help keep me grounded as well.
And I'd also be remiss if I didn't ask you, Your Honor, about my new friend, Wendell, and your relationship with him.
Yeah, Wendell, that's my cousin.
Yeah, I'm very well aware.
Yeah, we grew up together, and Wendell can tell you, Wendell could play some ball too.
Wendell
could shoot. Oh, Wendell could shoot.
Oh, he didn't tell me that. He's holding back.
Oh yeah, Wendell's a ball player, and and Wendell also has that community mindset where his thing is he's trying to help students, and he believes in trying to open up the doors and help students achieve academically. And so I'm very, very proud of him and applaud him for maintaining that integrity and that desire to want to reach back and help others, which is something that our parents instilled in us at an early age. And it's about giving back. And if you give back, if you do your best, and this goes to my dad just always did it. He'd always tell us, so long as you've done your best, that's all you can ask. And that's what I try and do. Every single day I do my best, but then I try and let it go.
Yeah.
You got to let it go so you can be ready for the next day. I do want to share one story with you if I know time is getting long, but there's one story.
No, we have all the time in the world, Your Honor. Absolutely. And we can chase any rabbit down any zebra hole we want.
Okay. Because I do want to share this one because you never know how you're going to have an opportunity to impact somebody's life, which is one of the reasons why I love going over and participating in career days and talking to the students. And I invite them. I always invite them to come in and visit. My door is always open. The only reason my door is closed now is because I'm doing this interview. And anytime they come in, I will talk to them. I explain to them what's going on in the courtroom. That is a constant since I've been on the bench. So since 1993, I've had 3 or 4 attorneys who've actually told me the reason they went to law school. And in fact, I'll say this one attorney for sure, because he was so specific. He asked me to approach once and not to talk about the case. And he came up and he told me, he said, I just wanted to let you know, the reason I went to law school is because you and your dad came to a career day at Whaley when I was a student there. I remember that day, and the only reason I can remember that day is I only did one career day with my father, and it was at Whaley. So it means that young man who's now an attorney was sitting in that classroom. But let me tell you, one of the joys that I've had sitting as a judge is the Obie Anthony case. Now, I don't know, I can't give you all of the details because it's such a long saga. The bottom line is, and if you Google his name, you see it come up right away. Obie Anthony, Obie Anthony. Obie Anthony was wrongfully convicted of murder in 1996. His case is actually a special circumstance case, which means he could have gotten the death penalty. Obie always proclaimed his innocence. As judges, one of the things that we do in addition to trying cases, remember I talked about how I try cases one at a time? One of the other things that we do is we deal with petitions that we get from prisoners who've been convicted, who are incarcerated, and their appeals have ended. So now they can file what we call petitions for writs of habeas corpus. There's no limit to the number they can file. If we get them every single day, all the time. 95% of them I summarily deny. I can look at it and say, there's no basis here. Obie Anthony's petition came in, and immediately it was so well written. It was so detailed. It had been so well researched and so well documented. I said, something's wrong here. Now, to make a long story short, and he was well represented by attorneys from the Innocence Project, Santa Clara Innocence Project, and Loyola Innocence Project. When I read that petition, I knew that I was going to have to conduct a hearing to determine whether or not this young man was wrongfully convicted. After exhaustive exchange of briefings, putting it over, exchange of discovery, hearing from the Attorney General's office, we conducted an 8-day evidentiary hearing. At that hearing, it was clear to me that this young man was wrongfully convicted and was innocent. Now, this is being conducted in 2012. So he'd been incarcerated since 1996. After hearing this case and realizing that the main witness who testified against him was a habitual liar, and that he had lied on the witness stand, lied about numerous things, one thing in particular, that he had his own case and that he had gotten a deal in exchange for testifying against Obie Anthony, which he denied in front of the jury, and the DA did not correct him in his trial, I reversed his conviction. Now, this case got a lot of publicity because this is rarely done. Because again, he had been convicted in 1996, 1997, like I said, and then here I am, 16, 17 years later, I'm reversing it. And I reversed the conviction, I set him free, and ultimately I found that he was factually innocent.
He was what, Your Honor?
Factually innocent.
What does that term mean?
That means that we had an additional hearing after I reversed his conviction. I heard evidence, and I determined not only did the people commit error in convicting him, but that he was totally innocent, factually innocent, that he was not the person who did that shooting. And the details of it are just unbelievably interesting. It occurred outside a well-known house of prostitution. The main witness against him was the pimp who was running the house of prostitution, John Jones, who, like I said, had his own problems, who identified Obie even though he didn't know him. The only reason they got to Obie was because he had a gang nickname that was similar to the name that had been circulating amongst the street. Oh, just all kinds of things were going on. But this young man, Obie, never revealed a hint of hatred and was never discouraged. And when I freed him, I told him something that my father told all of his children, and it's on his headstone: never, ever give up. Now, Obie sued the LAPD because there was a detective involved with the Los Angeles Police Department. And see, this is where it goes. And there was a book written about this case. And the detective, I think, was so concerned about her book in closing this case. That's one of the reasons why she made the mistakes and did the things that she did. Obie sued them to show you how strong his case must have been. And again, this case is over with. So, and this is all factual. So I'm not talking about a pending case. This is factual. Obie sued. They didn't even file a response. They settled the case for $8.5 million. $8.5 million. Now, to Obi's credit, he has set up an organization called Exoneration. Let me see. I have something here. Exonerated Nation. This is Obi Anthony right here. He was just on a program about 2 weeks ago that I attended, and he was happy to see me there. I hadn't seen him in a long time.
I bet he was. I bet he's pretty happy to see you every time he sees you.
But
I'd have a room in my. Actually, I just give you my house.
Obi has set up an organization that's designed to help individuals who've been wrongfully convicted. So he's trying to give back. That's outstanding. And he always tells me, he says, "I'm trying to make you proud of me." And I said, "Obi, you are making me proud of me."
Oh, wow. That is so
that
amazing.
Was one of the highlights of my judicial career, to have been able to right a wrong. And I must say that when I went out to take the bench to do it, I don't get nervous, but I did think about my dad. Yeah. And I said, I know Daddy would be proud of me in doing this. I did think about that.
So, Your Honor, I have to ask you about, things from maybe a little bit of broader perspective. There's been a lot of dialogue in our country over the last few years about policing. And there's been a lot of dialogue in our country about incarceration, our having the highest rate of incarceration in the quote unquote civilized world, whatever that means. And of course, the percentage of people of color who are incarcerated in our country. What do you think about those topics?
Well, I think that there are things that need to be discussed, and we need to always continue to discuss them. And certainly, one of the issues that people are now talking about is the discretion that judges have in imposing sentences. When 3 strikes came down, it pretty much indicated if you get your 3rd strike, that's 25 to life. Now, as judges, though, we've always had discretion to strike the strikes. And I'll be very frank. If the case is appropriate, and if it's appropriate given the defendant's youth, what happened in the crime, I have no hesitance at all in striking a strike, because I want to try and make sure that any sentence I impose is a fair sentence. Now, there's a movement afoot to make certain offenses so that they don't qualify as a strike, or so that that judges are now be given a little bit even more leeway to determine whether or not they want to impose a strike and what sentence they want to impose. But we've always had discretion, and I just think that it's important that we keep that in mind when we're imposing the sentence that we feel is appropriate for that case and that case only. So you don't sentence just given a conviction. You really need to look at the individual's background and see if there are mitigating circumstances that might outweigh the aggravating circumstances. And we also look and see if the aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating circumstances. And going through that process, you try and impose the appropriate sentence. Now, we've had some changes in laws in California where certain felonies have been reduced to misdemeanors, or certain felonies, instead of serving the time in the prison system, you can serve in the LA County Jail. I hope that will be a signal to those individuals that are receiving these changes that they can change their ways and that the recidivism rate will go down. That's what we want to see. But just releasing individuals without giving them some sort of rehabilitative services or training, or providing them with an opportunity to either get a job or go back to school or support themselves, you're still going to have that revolving door. And it's not something that I think is an easy question, and I don't think there's one solution. But I do think we have to keep trying. And I don't know if the stats are really changed in terms of these instances of police brutality or police misconduct. I don't think it's necessarily gotten worse. I really don't. But with the advent of cameras being everywhere and the internet, we're hearing about them more often. And that's what's, I think, is really going on. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, and I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I'm saying that is what's happening. We're being saturated with these stories about instances that are going on. Because most of the time, the police officers are doing their job. And most officers do their job. They're trying to do their job. And we shouldn't stereotype police officers, just like we shouldn't stereotype a brother walking down the street and he or she has tattoos, or they're wearing their hair a certain way,
I got a lot of tattoos, Your Honor.
There you go. Don't stereotype. Don't prejudge. And this is what I tell my jurors. I give them the story about don't prejudge individuals because of what they do or the way they look. Be fair. And all of us can do it. All of us can do it. It may take a little effort, but we can do it.
Now, I also have to ask you, how do you think Compton's doing today?
I think Compton is moving in the right direction. Compton has its share of problems just like anybody else. But I'll be very frank. I think the mayor who's just reelected, Asia Brown, she's extremely intelligent. She has some very creative ideas. She has a lot of energy. And I really think that if we can get the council to do what I was talking about earlier in terms of don't take things personal. There's some personality clashes that are going on right now. Because I do go over and watch the meetings. They aren't meeting this month, but I usually go over on Tuesdays and watch just to observe. And they would tell you they are having some personality conflicts. And what you have to do, in my opinion, you have to learn to set that stuff aside. And they have an excellent opportunity to do some work on the infrastructure because of some measures that were passed and some money that's now available. And that's been a big complaint. People want their roads repaved. They want lighting. They want the trees trimmed. They're going to have the opportunity to do that in the upcoming year. And I think they will. I think they will. So I'm proud of where Compton is going. And I think the school district is doing their best to turn things around academically for the students. Now, I'll be very frank. I am defensive of Compton. So you know, if people, I'm not saying Compton doesn't have its problems. It does. But I'm going to stress the positive stuff. I'm going to stress what's going on. And I'm always going to try and push the positive aspect and how things are moving forward.
Now, do I understand this right from Wendell that there's a new high school being built?
There is. Compton High School. Compton High School.
Could you tell me a little bit about what's going on?
Well, they sent out, they got the money. They passed the bond to get the money to rebuild the high school. So financially, it's no problem. But it's a process that they have to go through, partly because Compton High School has been there for so long. They want to make sure that the architectural design is something that everybody can agree upon. They have finally completed that. And so it's my understanding that they're going to have to move the students either to junior high schools or other high schools. And they want to completely rehabilitate it. I mean, tear it down and rebuild it from ground up. So they're in the process of going through the assignments and reassignments of the students. I don't think this year, but I think next year. And then they're going to tear it down and rebuild it. Now, I was suggesting and arguing and hoping, because I was interviewed by the architects. They interviewed certain people. I was one of the ones they interviewed.
No surprise, Your Honor.
I was stressing if there was some way they could maintain the facade of the administration building, or at least keep that, to maintain some continuity and some tie to the past.
Recognize
Compton
history.
has a rich history.
Yes.
Rich history. So we'll see.
So we'll see. We don't know the design yet, and we don't know if they're going to do that yet.
Yes, I've seen what they designed, and it doesn't have that. But I think that they might be having them tweak it a little bit. It's the design they had is very, very modern, very modern in terms of being able to make multiple use of classrooms. In fact, I don't think they're going to call them classrooms; they call them spaces and stuff. It's beautiful, beautiful design. Bring back the football field, the swimming pool, which they haven't had for decades, tennis courts, the whole bit. So it's exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. I would have thought Compton would have to have great tennis courts.
Because of Venus and Serena?
Well, yeah, I'm just guessing. I don't know.
Let me tell you a story about them as well. Because I knew their dad when they were a little boy and little girl. In fact, my dad was on the city council. I was an attorney. And I formed a group called the Compton Athletic Foundation. It was going to be a nonprofit organization designed to set up a mechanism for all the athletes that have come from Compton, and there are dozens who have made it, to have something where they can give money back to an organization that's going to give that money to the sports and to the schools organizations within the city of Compton. Compton Athletic Foundation. I formed it. My dad, my brother, we had a bunch of us who were going to be on the board of directors, some of the local community people. So we had an organizational meeting. Who walks in at the first organizational meeting is but Richard Williams. Walks right into my law office. And he knew my dad because my father said, "Oh, this is Richard Williams." we let him use the tennis courts anytime he wants because he's teaching his daughters how to play tennis.
No kidding.
No, I kid you not. This is what my father, that's how he introduced me to Richard Williams. So they let him have the keys to the tennis court. He could come 24/7.
Turns out that was a really good decision, right?
It was, but I'm disappointed in Richard, and I can't wait to see him because we're gonna have a little bit of some words next time I see him, and he knows that, so he's avoiding me because he wrote his book and he didn't mention that. Now I'm not saying he mentioned my father, but he said that nobody in the city of Compton helped him. That's just not true.
Oh wow,
that's just not true. Because he walked in and he told us, he did say this. He said, "I have 2 daughters, and they are going to be the greatest female tennis players in the world." He did say that. Those are almost his words, verbatim. And
incredible.
So we invited him to be on the committee and on the group. Now, as it turns out, of course, the organization didn't go anywhere. I just didn't have the time or energy to really do what I wanted to do with it. But it was still incorporated up to about 10 years ago. Richard Williams. And so he came in here one time, and I spoke to him, and he said he's going to give me his book, and he did. And after I read his book, I sent word to him. I want him to come back because I need to talk to him about a couple of things. He hasn't been back since then, though.
That's great. Your Honor, is there anything else before we...
The only thing that I hope, if I can do anything through talking with you, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself, it's been fun, is that if anybody who's listening to this or who's watching it, if they have a dream, I hope that they will pursue that dream. And don't let anybody tell you can't do it. Because as I like to say, I did it. And if I did it, then you can do it. And in the words of my father, never, ever give up. Of course, he was paraphrasing Winston Churchill, but that was his theme: never ever give up. And you can do it.
Your dad's, as my friend Matty A likes to say, his audio matched his video.
That's right.
It's just another way of saying he walked his talk, right?
He walked it, and he was a very unique individual. He really was.
And clearly you do too. Well, Your Honor, I can't thank you enough. I'm so glad that Wendell connected us. Your life story, and frankly, the story of your family and your community is an incredible, incredible inspiration and just an important story to share. And so that's inspiring. And so I thank you for that. And I also want you to know, for what it's worth, that at a time when some people question our justice system, and at a time where some people question a lot of things about the American dream and how fair the dream is, knowing that you get up every day and sit on that bench makes me very, very happy. And it's going to, I think, make many, many, many other people happy as more people hear your story. And so I can't thank you enough for your generosity with me, but way more importantly, for your extraordinary life of service. Thank you so much.
It certainly is my pleasure. And I kid you not, if you're ever in Compton, all you have to do is just walk in, say who you are. I'll stop what I'm doing and get off the bench and come down and talk to you.
I'm going to come down and see you if that's okay. I'd like to book some time.
Absolutely.
Next time I'm going to be in the Los Angeles area, and it would be a thrill for me to buy you a coffee, a beer, a dinner, and anything else for that matter. Or maybe
it will be coffee. It won't be beer.
Of course, it won't be beer. I'm sorry.
Coffee.
And maybe I could get a ride in your convertible.
Oh, I love it. I'll never get another car that's not a convertible. Hardtop. I'll never get another car that's not a convertible. It makes a difference.
Fantastic. Your Honor, thank you so much. Be legendary, my friend. Wow. Thank you again, Judge Filer. It has truly been an honor to have you with us on Legends and Losers. Now, I'd ask you, is there someone in your life who would benefit from this episode? Do you have a young person maybe in your life who's considering a career in the law, or maybe studying law right now, who would be inspired by Judge Filer, or anybody else? Because I think, as you've just heard, every single one of us can benefit from hearing Judge Filer's story. So I'd ask you to please share this episode with people who you think it might make a difference to. And I want to thank you deeply from the bottom of my heart for tuning in for this episode of Legends and Losers, and bless you.